Well, it's happened again. The Obama administration refusing to acknowledge the threat from Islamic extremists. Tonight, Secretary Kerry suggesting that blaming Islam would be the biggest error that we could make in the war on terror. The shocking comments highlighting huge divisions between the United States and its key European allies in the fight to combat global terrorism. And Carl Rove joins us live now. Carl, just break this down for me, because I think everyone is wondering, why can't they say the words Islamic extremism?
Well, I'm not certain I've got a good explanation for it. It makes us look oddly disconnected. Look, today the Japanese prime minister traveling in the Middle East after the death at the hands of ISIL of 2 Japanese nationals called it Islamic extremism. The president of the United States can't bring himself to do it, but the president of France can bring himself to call it Islamic extremism. Secretary Kerry can't bring himself to say it, but the British foreign minister standing right next to him calls it Islamic extremism. I don't get it why the administration doesn't seem to understand that the moral authority of calling it out as Islamic extremism is to our advantage. It causes people inside the Muslim community to understand they have an essential role to play in confronting a virus which is infecting their religion. Look, Kerry today in his speech said, you know, this is really alienation, poverty, and thrill-seeking. Well, he's right that that contributes to it, but that would be insufficient without the blessing of radical imams and a radical Islamic ideology that justifies these kind of acts. And until and unless the United States government says that, and we can't act upon it.
But, Carl, you know, people keep talking about getting moderate Muslims to weigh in and getting imams to weigh in. I'm not sure that would make much of a difference. I really don't. I mean, you look at the footage, they're pretty angry already. And with regard to the administration, I look back in 2009, the administration had no trouble using the term right-wing extremism, identifying that kind of extremism, when it was referring to a Department of Homeland Security threat by Republicans. So they've actually used an adjective before that noun before.
Yeah. Well, I take that point, and it's a good one. I disagree with you on the issue of getting assistance inside the Islamic community. The most populous Islamic country in the world is Indonesia, in which they practice a version of Islam, which is more peaceful and it allows them to live in community with non-believers, with non-Muslim believers. And they have confronted Islamic extremism inside their nation in a very profound way, both using the authority of the state and the authority of the religion, because they understand what a threat it would represent to their life. And so we want to do this. I thought it was an incredibly important thing for the president of Egypt to say we must confront the radicals within Islam, and because they are perverting our faith, using the name of our religion to do things which are not in the nature of our religion. We want that. We don't want to put everybody who's a Muslim in the world be against us. Our point is your religion is being perverted by extremists, and you have a moral responsibility to confront them in your communities where you live and in the nations where you exist.
Yeah, I do think they have a moral authority. I'm not sure how much of a difference it would make, because these terrorists have already perverted the religion enough. And I want to go back and to your point, because I did read your Wall Street Journal column yesterday. You talked about how disconnected the president is. Carl, you know that President Obama, not easy at admitting his mistakes. If he says radical extremism, wouldn't that mean that he'd have to go back and concede that he was wrong all along? I mean, he was wrong in his Cairo speech. He was wrong about ISIS being JV. He was wrong about the Arab Spring that's been a failure. And he's not going to do that.
No, look, I think you've hit the only plausible explanation, which is the president is arrogantly stubborn in refusing to do this because he understands on some level, maybe not consciously, but on some level, that this would undermine his whole worldview, that America is to blame, that the things that have happened in the Middle East are largely the responsibility of us or the Israelis, that we're at fault, it's not them, it's not the bad guys. But it does make him look oddly disconnected when everybody else in the world with whom we're standing is willing to say it. It also makes him look disconnected. There was an unbelievable editorial today in the Washington Post in which they took him to task on, Iran and Yemen and Syrian proxies, and the president lets them sort of go to town. Iran through its proxies in Yemen, Iran through its proxies in Syria, and yet he refuses to act firmly against Assad or to allow additional pressure to be built on sanctions in Iran because he's afraid of offending them. What about them offending us by their actions? They are the sponsors of the revolt in Yemen, and they are the principal backers along with Russia in Syria. So, you know, the president's mindset here is, you know, it's one thing to be disconnected. It's another thing to be disconnected and dangerous. And that's what the president's thinking is on these issues.
It's certainly not Peace Prize-worthy behavior, I would say, Carl. All right, hold on, Carl. Well, another big story tonight we got to get to. Hang on one second. New outrage over President Obama finding time to sit down with 3 YouTube stars. Yes, one of those interviewers, I'm sure you've seen the footage, is a woman who bathes in her own cereal. Yummy. So how could President Obama refuse to take the time to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu? Does the president have his priorities straight?
President Obama apparently picking his meetings carefully.
Oh, wait.
President Obama has decided he will not be meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. But yesterday he did meet with a bunch of YouTube stars.
I have green lipsticks, one for your first wife.
For the people who say this is diminishing the dignity of the office, that happened a long time ago.
If you had any superpower, what would it be?
What country are we becoming?
I cut all the hoods off his hoodies. I did that for real to protect him because I'm afraid when he goes outside that somebody might shoot and kill him.
Who knew that in order to get an interview with the president, you've got to jump in a bathtub?
So, Carl, if I were sitting in a bathtub of, I don't know, Cheerios, do you think the president would sit down and talk to me?
You know, I don't know. I mean, let's ask Chris Wallace if that's how he's going to try and get the next interview with the White House. Look, look, I understand the White House interest in trying to go around the media and go directly into the, into the devices, the iPads, the computers, the devices of mobile devices of Americans and get their message through. But I did think this was demeaning and silly and not serious, and the president was tone deaf. I mean, they put a big hype up about this on the State of the Union address, and then the thing comes out about Netanyahu, and they don't seem to understand that that this makes them look even less connected and less interested in the reality of our relationship with Israel. Josh Earnest today made it worse. He says, well, our excuse is there's an election coming up in March. I understand that. You don't want to look like you're intruding in the middle of election. Yet, on the other hand, we have an election in May in Britain, and Obama was perfectly happy having Prime Minister Cameron here and setting him up to Capitol Hill to negotiate. Then the other thing Ernest says is, well, President Obama has spent more time with Benjamin Netanyahu than any other world leader. Now, 2 things. One is, first of all, remember, part of that time was subjecting him to the abuse of the White House staff, which sat him down in his chair, refused to give him a glass of water, and spent hours berating him, and then told him to leave by the back door and alerted the media they were throwing the Prime Minister of Israel out of the back door of the White House.
I mean, isn't that the problem, though,
particularly quality time.
Is it? But I mean, you hit on something. Like, I don't see. I mean, look, Howard Kurtz came out. He said this interview was beneath the office of the president. And I mean, I think Tucker in that montage made a good point. He said the horse left the barn a long time ago. I mean, didn't that happen when he sat down with Pimp with a limp? And I get why he does it. And I actually think he's genius at it. He does it way better than a lot of Republicans do. I wish we had Republicans that could sit down and do these type of things. So I give him credit for going to that audience and using that medium. But the fact that he snubbed Benjamin Netanyahu, I mean, personally, Carl, cutting off diplomatic relations with Israel, why can't he do both? I mean, it really does make him look bad.
Look, there's a broader problem here. President Obama spends virtually no time with foreign leaders. Take his predecessor, who every 2 to 3 weeks had a secure video conference with either Maliki in Iraq or a Karzai in Afghanistan, and President Obama went nearly a year without talking to either one of them. There's no world leader who thinks he has a personal relationship with President Obama. And look, personal relationships matter. The interests of the United States predominate, but your ability to get things done matters to a big degree on what kind of a relationship you as the president are able to build with with foreign leaders. And this president puts no interest in that, just like he puts no interest in building a relationship with the leaders of Congress.
Well, he has a personal relationship with GloZell, Carl. He's got a personal relationship with her. Maybe she can share some makeup tips. I don't know. It's hard to pull off green lipstick. Very hard. And I will say this. She got some tougher questions in than those folks over at NBC. So I give her credit for that. And I do love Fruit Loops. Thank you, Karl Rove.
Thank you.